J-U-S-S-O-L-I. And that's different than just sanguineous, which is by blood, by lineage. So one is you're born in a territory, you're a citizen, that's it. The other is saying, well, you got to have some lineage with another citizen from that nation state. And we'll come back on that. But this is the case, and this is how it was reported back in the 1890s. I pulled this over from the Library of Congress so we can see exactly what it looked like. And this was an appeal from the Northern District of California, and it was a very interesting case. Back in 1897, this was argued in front of the Supreme Court, and it was a 6-2 decision, so the majority came out and found accordingly. They said that a child that was born in the United States of parents of Chinese descent, because that was the big issue back then, back in San Francisco, if you had a child born and their parents were Chinese, who at the time of that child's birth, those Chinese parents were subjects of the emperor. Okay, in other words, they were Chinese citizens, but have permanent domicile and residence in the United States and are there carrying on business and not employed as a diplomat or any other official capacity. In other words, they didn't work for China. The question is, do they become a citizen? They said yes, they do become, at the time of his birth, a citizen of the United States. And that's by virtue of the 14th Amendment, right? All persons born or naturalized are, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, and this is just a syllabus, so this is just a summation of what the rest of the case will hold. It's 84 pages, and we'll hit some of the highlights therein just so we can understand how all this works. But what they're telling us is that this person had permanent domicile and residence, which means that those parents were here legally. They were not in violation of U.S. law here illegally. And so because they had subjected themselves to the jurisdiction of the United States and were compliant with the law, the 14th Amendment applies to them, and their child was declared to be a citizen. Now, when we go through this, right, because they're going to layer this into their arguments, you're going to hear Wong Kim Ark repeatedly. And we actually have a picture of this individual. You can see we did create some slides here. And this was Wong Kim Ark. This was a photograph from a 1904 immigration document. And the case, as we'll see, articulates that he was, or his parents rather, were in fact legally in the country. Let's take a look. So what happened was, this is a writ of habeas corpus, so he was being detained, and he left the country in the United States, went back to China, and then came back into the country. So then at customs, when he was coming back in 1895, right, so this guy from the United States born here goes back to China, comes back, he gets stopped at the port of entry. San Francisco says, hey, the hell are you doing here? You're not a citizen. Get out of here. He says, what? I am a citizen. I am a citizen. I'm 21 years of age. I was born in San Francisco. My parents are Chinese and they're subjects of the Emperor of China. And he went back over to China and came back on a steamship. He applied for customs to come into the country. They said, no, you're not a citizen. So then there was a hearing. The district attorney of the United States came back in and said, whoa, this person is not entitled to land here. He's not a citizen. That's ridiculous. They said, although he was born in San Francisco, not under the laws of California, is he a citizen? Because he is subject to the Emperor of China. He's got allegiances to them. They said, well, because the said Wong Kim Ark has been at all times by reason of his race a Chinese person, he's just been a laborer here, and so he's not entitled to land in the United States. And there were also a bunch of Chinese exclusion acts to say, no, they can't come in and work here and so on and so forth. So the case makes its way up, and it was submitted to a decision of the court. They said, well, here's the deal. Wong Kim Ark was born in 1873, and his mother and father came from China. And they also note this out. Now, this is a key part of this, because they're going to come in here and say that this applies to illegal aliens. His parents, Wong Kim Ark's parents, were not illegal aliens. Here's from this opinion back from the 1890s, that at the time of his said birth, Wang's parents, his mother and father, were domiciled residents of the United States and had established and enjoyed a permanent domicile and residence therein at said city and county of San Francisco. Okay, they went in there to the government and they subjected themselves to the jurisdiction of the United States. They were complying with immigration. And they lived in the United States for quite a while. And then they had a kid. And that kid was a citizen, according to the court. Now, the dissent in this case argued that that's pretty ridiculous, and they should have this other concept of jus sanguinis, like the rest of the world has, that says you've got to actually have lineage with a parent who is a citizen of the location in which you're trying to gain citizenship. So this is a slide that you can just pull up on Wikipedia or anywhere, and it will show you the countries that do citizenship by territory and location, called jus soli, and they're all here in blue, unrestricted. Now, this is a feature and a phenomenon of the Americas, and I think many theories say it's because of expansionism and because it was the New World and people needed people to migrate freely, and we didn't want to have a problem of people having statelessness, and so they needed to have more people, more citizens essentially, coming into the country in some way, shape, or form. But the rest of the world doesn't do this. Some of them may say that, yes, if you're born in their territory, you can be a citizen, but you got to have at least one parent that has some lineage or some connection to the country, so that people who are just passing by don't just drop kids off and get all the benefits of citizenship. So that, even if you're going to, now you might even disagree with that and say, well, that 14th Amendment holding is way too broad from Wong Kim Ark, and actually the interpretation that says that the permanent residents and their kids have lawful citizenship. But what they're going to do in all of these lawsuits is pervert this and expand this case to include illegal people who are not subjecting themselves to the jurisdiction thereof, not subjecting themselves to United States law. In fact, they're openly, flagrantly violating the law, saying we're coming in illegally. So that is the background for what has ultimately been used to predicate their lawsuits on. But let's take a look at what Trump's executive order actually does, and then we'll read through the complaint and the response, the order, the injunction from the courts. So here's what Trump said when he took office. He said, look, I'm the president now. Guess what?
Sweet. I didn't even know he was going to actually bring it up.
The United States citizenship is a priceless and profound gift. And the 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, critical phrase, meaning you're not in the country illegally because you've complied with the law, you're in our jurisdiction. The left is trying to pervert this to just say,
oops,
well,
I did it again. I hope it's not
geographic.
echoing
So if
hard.
you're just across this line, you can just drop a baby off and you're good. No, you've openly violated the sovereignty of the country. You are impugning our jurisdiction by entering and remaining in the country illegally. So it says, if you are subject to the jurisdiction thereof and you're born, then you're a citizen of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. Now, this provision repudiated the Dred Scott case, which misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African descent from being citizens solely based on their race. So it reversed that. And again, these freed people, okay, the slaves and the descendants, were subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And even the Constitution talked about them as 3/5 representation and other things. They were brought here against their will, enslaved, and subject to the United States, right? They were operating under the jurisdiction of the country involuntarily. But what they did is they misinterpreted that now, and they say anybody who's in violation of the law also counts. Trump says, but the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born within the United States. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the United States but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And so, consistent with this understanding, the Congress has further specified through legislation that a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a national and a citizen of the United States at birth, generally mirroring the 14th Amendment's text. So, among the categories of individuals born in the U.S. and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of the United States citizenship does not automatically extend to them in a couple situations. One, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the person was not a lawful U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. That is totally in alignment with what we just read in Wong Kim Ark. His parents were lawfully present in the country, residents and domiciled in San Francisco State and County. So if a mother is unlawful, that's not contemplated there. When that person's and that mother's presence in the United States at the time of the said birth was lawful but temporary, such as but not limited to, visiting the United States under the auspices of a waiver program or visiting on student work or tourist visa, and the father was not a citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of the birth, right? So that's even broader. She had lawful presence, but it was temporary. Okay, so not a lawful permanent resident. It was a visa waiver, tourist visa, or those other things. It's temporary. So it is limited to their connection to the country. They're subject to the jurisdiction, kind of. They're here very temporarily. They're not a part of the fabric of the country because they're going back. So you can see that's what it does. Now, the policy, they say it is the policy of the United States that no department or agency of the government shall issue documents recognizing U.S. citizenship or accept documents issued to local or other authorities purporting to recognize these people. If that person's mother was unlawfully present and the father was not a citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time, you're not a citizen. And when that person's mother was lawful, like when she was here lawfully, but it was temporary, and the father's not a citizen, doesn't count. You're not a citizen. And both of those, as we'll see fleshed out in court, I believe are in alignment with the 14th Amendment. Now, subsection A of this section shall apply only to persons who were born within the United States after 30 days of the date of this order. So you're also going to hear a lot of screeching and hemming and hawing from the left, including in the documents we'll look at in a minute, that are saying everybody's going to be, their citizen is stripped away. No, that's not even what Trump is saying. Only to people who are born 30 days from now. You don't count. So moms and dads, figure out where you want to have these kids. Nothing in this order shall be construed to infect the entitlement of other individuals, including the children of lawful permanent residents.